Hello, the name's Wright. Ryan Wright. That's my Bond impression. It's not my real Bond impression. I'm just fucking with you guys. Alright, so James Bond is led on a trail to uncover a secret organization named Spectre. Not Spectra, Spectre. Before watching this movie, I read some reviews, and I honestly thought to myself, this movie is probably just misunderstood. I felt like this would be one of those films that the masses had issues with, but I'd be there defending it. Okay, first off, the opening scene, like everyone's saying, is fantastic. It's a beautiful tracking shot, and if you don't know who James Bond is, it sets him up fairly decently, and then it's followed by this intense action sequence that's truly Bond reminiscent. As a matter of fact, all the action scenes are beautiful to watch. They're all wonderfully choreographed, they're all well shot. However, my main issues come in between the action scenes. Personally, I thought the execution of this story was very weak. It's a very serious film, very self-important, but it has a rather confusing tone. This Bond movie does that thing where Bond goes around the world, but anytime there was a location switch, it just felt like it was out of a different movie. It felt like it was a different movie like every 20-30 minutes. I just felt like there was a lack of consistency. Like, people are really loving the cinematography of this film. I love the action sequences, how they're shot, but I felt like overall there was a lack of consistency with the cinematography. However, those issues might actually just be blamed on the script. There's very expositional, very plot-driven dialogue with no real emotional substance to it. I just felt like this film really lacked in style. I felt like it really lacked in having a personality. And after great films like Casino Royale and Skyfall, it's a major disappointment to see how they practically canned character and just threw in plot points that had no real emotional resonance. With the subplot of M and a dude named C, that was so boring. It's exactly the plot of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, but a very boring execution of it. And I felt like they really should have done something to enhance Ralph Fiennes as M. See, when Judi Dench was M, there was interesting dynamics. They hated each other, but they loved each other. Judi Dench was kind of like a tough mom on Bond. Ralph Fiennes is not compelling to watch. He's rather cliche. More importantly, he doesn't have an interesting relationship with Bond at all. However, I'll say they included Q more in the story, and I like what they did with him. They got to give him some field action this time around, and he served a major purpose in completing this mission. I really liked what they did with him, and I think the actor is really fun to watch too. See, this film, I was like primarily bored. I found myself wanting to hurry up and get to the next action scene because the drama was so dull. And my opinion about the Bond girl, I feel like indifferent towards, because a part of me likes her, likes what her performance was, but the way she was written and the way they told her story, I thought was just another boring plot. I know it's a Bond film, but these Daniel Craig films have a much more serious tone, and there was some really just cheesy moments that I'm not sure if they were intentional or not. I know it's Bond tradition for 007 to use his 007 inside a vagina. He has sex with women. But the two times it happens in this film, it's so out of place. It's so cheesy. And especially with the first sex scene. If you guys have seen it, I think Bond comes across a little abusive and manipulative in the first sex scene he has. See, when it comes to the cheese of this film, they tried paying homage to classic Bond, but instead of making it like campy fun, they toned it all down and made it much more serious. So I found myself going, I'd rather watch a fun Bond movie with all the elements they have in this. Because when you make it serious, it's now just a cliche movie and nothing really original in there. Like, doing homage is one thing, but just rehashing is a whole other story. Okay, but let me backtrack a little bit. They didn't completely can character. I just felt like there was no true character of Bond being infused until like the last half hour of this film. But at that point, we're in the finale, so we need the big action sequence as well. So even the big reveals that should have an emotional effect on Bond, like a serious emotional effect, it honestly seemed like it didn't really bother him. I just gotta complete my mission. Like, having exposition of a character does not equal to strong emotional drama of a character. Like I said earlier, this film just doesn't really have personality. There's no real flair, even in its comedic moments, especially with the dialogue. It seems so off. Like, When they tried infusing humor, the film was so serious that no one was laughing in the theater because it just came across awkward and very forced. Another major issue I have with this film is the use of Christoph Waltz. A lot of people are saying this, and I greatly felt it too. His character is totally wasted. They tease him in the early part of Act 2. Then he doesn't show up till like the last half hour of this film, and this film is 2.5 hours. But I will admit, when he's on screen, he's the most interesting person to watch. He's more subtle than I expected him to be, but I really felt like we could have had some awesome dynamics with him. And you got Daniel Craig and Christoph Waltz, two great actors, man. Just put them in more scenes together. I felt like the writers were like, but in Skyfall, Javier Bardem comes in halfway through the film, and then they heavily focus on him. It'd be like we're copying Skyfall if we did that. It honestly wouldn't have been a problem if you infused the villain more, especially when it's Christoph Waltz. He's a 2-time Academy Award winning actor. The villain I did like, though, was Dave Bautista. He was a brute force, barely any dialogue, but he had a wonderful, violent introduction that immediately tells you everything about this character. And he was like a perfect physical threat to Bond. It was more than just his appearance. The body language, the facial expressions he had down made him really threatening. See, these plot points, they tried making it feel more personal, but it really didn't feel personal. And that really comes down to one of my main complaints, which is Bond himself. I know I'm gonna get a lot of people arguing with me on this, but I wasn't a fan of the way Bond was portrayed in this film. You can't have 3 prior films that explore Bond as a human being, then completely stop that, and then go back to a Bond that we knew before Casino Royale was ever released. A very 2-dimensional Bond. Some people still think Daniel Craig was great in this role, and he is, but in Spectre, I felt like he looked tired. He looked like he was bored of playing Bond. I heard about this interview after I watched the movie where Daniel Craig was pretty much saying he's sick of playing Bond, and it really shows. He just seemed like he was over this, but then again, that could be because of the lazy script. Because the script doesn't really offer moments for James Bond to shine as a character. See, with Casino Royale and Skyfall, there was a great blend of action, adventure, mystery, with just enough character for a Bond film. Enough for it to really hit so you actually care about Bond. In this, he's 2-dimensional. And like I said earlier, by the time we get to the moments where we could get some character exploration of the guy, finally, we're in the finale, so we don't have time to explore it. So the major question, is this as bad as Quantum of Solace? My answer, no, it's not. Is it more disappointing? Yes, because you got the same people who did Skyfall. You'd think this would at least just be entertaining. Like I said, action sequences, entertaining. All the other stuff, really boring. Because you see, with Quantum of Solace, you can be more forgiving because they had like the writer's strike going on, and then Daniel Craig and Mark Forster practically had to write the script themselves. So we can be more forgiving on that. This one, can't be as forgiving on. That's why it's a bigger disappointment. So yes, action is solid. Dave Bautista is great. I know I didn't talk about her, but Moneypenny I thought was really good in the film too. The minimal screen time of Christoph Waltz is good. But overall, this film had a very lazy script. There was no personality. Drama was not interesting. I was just overall bored when action was not going on. Well, anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in to my upbeat, positive review of Spectre. I guess it's a rating time. Man, I should have established a rating system. I give it 2 out of 5 pubic hairs. 1 out of 5 pubic hairs. Has it earned 5? Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe today and become a Rejectabot by clicking this button up here. Follow us on our social networks, because if we get enough followers, we can get even more product placement on multiple platforms. I've been told by my representation to promote my Instagram and Vine more, so follow me there, and maybe, just maybe, I'll post more. But it's really about the followers. Product placement, people. Product placement.